The golden light of a late Californian afternoon bathed the sprawling estate perched above a quiet canyon. Inside, the great dining room was set for what should have been another perfect family evening. A crystal chandelier casting soft prisms across fine china, a low hum of classical guitar drifting from hidden speakers, and long oak tables laden with seasonal fare. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, once the epitome of Hollywood romance, sat opposite one another across the table. Their children chattered animatedly, but the parents' smiles were tinged with fatigue, the glow of fresh love replaced by the steady burn of long years spent in the relentless glare of public life. Photographers' flashes and charity events had long ago intruded upon the spontaneous joys of their early courtship. Now, each film premiere, each deadline, each score of headlines felt like another mile added to an already endless journey. Between Brad's marathon rehearsals and Angelina's countless trips for humanitarian work, invitations from directors and causes blurred together until there was hardly time left to simply be together. That evening, he tried to recall the warmth of her laughter when she first taught him a phrase in French. She tried to remember the sparkle in his eyes at Cannes, but the memory felt distant, like a melody heard in a dream. When their longtime housekeeper retired the week before, neither noticed how much routine she had woven into their daily lives until the new maid arrived. Marina was 28, slender, with dark hair pulled back in a neat chignon and eyes that flickered like embers whenever she spoke. She moved quietly through the corridors, straightening pillows, dusting photographs, arranging fresh flowers. There was nothing extraordinary in her work, yet everyone sensed a subtle change in the air. The mansion, once humming with well-rehearsed efficiency, now seemed to pause and breathe around her. Brad noticed first. He caught himself pausing mid-step as she stepped into the hallway, her presence an unspoken question. On a day Angelina had returned late from a charity gala, he lingered in the library, poring over script annotations, only to realize she had vanished from his view. When he rose to look for her, he found Marina adjusting the drapes so the fading sunlight spilled evenly across the room. The way her slender fingers traced the fabric captivated him for a heartbeat longer than should have been polite. He muttered an apology, but she only offered a gentle, understanding smile and continued her task, unaware, or pretending not to notice, that his heart had skipped. Angelina sensed something too. On her first morning back, she watched through the corner of her eye as Brad and Marina exchanged an all-too-warm greeting in the foyer. A light brush of the hand, a glint of recognition in their shared look. She stiffened, forcing a courteous nod, and retreated to her home office, where she poured herself into emails for the next gala. Despite her focus, she could not banish the tiny seed of unease that had lodged itself in her chest. It was as if the household itself had begun to tilt, a silent shift she could not yet name. Late that night, the lights dimmed and the children were tucked away. Brad paused by the grand piano in the music room, half listening to its soft resonance. Villa lights glowed like distant stars through the tall windows. He thought of the early days, that exhilarating first rush of adrenaline when they met on set, unpredictable, untamed, alive. He could still feel the echo of her laughter, sharp and bright, calling to him. But over time, those spark fires had settled into embers, leaving a slow burning ache. Marina's calm presence, her understated grace, felt like oxygen in a room grown thin. For her part, Marina felt culpable in the hush that had descended over the mansion. She had never planned to become the catalyst for any unraveling, yet every gentle brush of sheet, every discreet adjustment of a painting seemed to draw Brad's gaze. She reminded herself of her own uncertainty, of starting afresh after leaving a small-town life behind, but found her heart pounding when he offered to help carry a tray of morning coffee. Each thought of him carried an electric charge that frightened her, yet she could not discourage it without betraying something in herself she barely understood. As the night deepened, the estate lay in a tranquil hush. Outside, the canyon wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it the chill promise of change. Within the walls, the perfect surface of family life trembled imperceptibly, an unseen tremor before the storm. Nobody spoke of it aloud, but all three felt it, an undeniable tension, a silent question pressing against every polished corridor. The calm had settled, but it would not last. A gathering storm was coming, and by morning, its first lightning bolt would crack the sky above their carefully constructed world. In the days that followed the arrival of the new housekeeper, the atmosphere within the mansion thickened with unspoken longing. Each morning, Brad found himself pausing at the top of the grand staircase, half expecting to catch a glimpse of Marina's silhouette as she glided down the hall. His pulse quickened when he heard the soft click of her heels on marble or the rustle of her uniform as she adjusted curtains to let the first light in. What should have been mundane routines, making coffee, arranging linens, dusting heirloom vases, now felt charged with electricity, as though every shared space had suddenly become charged territory. Marina, for her part, was acutely aware of his attention. She felt the tension coiling low in her stomach whenever he entered the room where she worked. Sometimes he lingered just out of sight, pretending to study a painting while really watching the graceful line of her neck or the way her hair caught the morning sun. She chastised herself, telling her heart to slow, to remember the gulf between them. He was the husband of the world's most famous actress, she a paid employee. Yet his presence unsettled every carefully guarded boundary she'd drawn around her feelings. Their encounters were accidental by day and purposeful by night. In the gallery wing, as Marina dusted the frames of the Jolie Pitt children's drawings, Brad would excuse himself from his workout in the home gym and appear at the doorway, a glass of water in hand. "It's hot out there," he'd say, offering the condensation-laced tumbler. Their fingers brushed. A flicker of awareness passed through the air, heavier than words. He would thank her, his eyes locking on hers, loaded with gratitude and more. Then he would turn away, clearing his throat, as if ashamed at having lingered so long in her orbit. Angelina would catch glimmers of this silent drama. One afternoon, from the terrace where she reviewed proposals for her next humanitarian mission, she saw Brad exit the library with that familiar, furtive look. Moments later, Marina slipped into the same doorway, and their gazes met in a charged tableau. Angelina's heart clenched. She told herself it was imagination, the stress of travel and deadlines twisting her perception. Still, she could not shake the sense that her husband and the new maid were dancing a delicate waltz in shadows, and she was left waiting for the music to end. When Angelina announced she would leave for a week to host a gala in New York, the timing felt strangely convenient. Marina observed Angelina's departure from the carriage house doorway. Dressed in a trench coat and scarf, Angelina paused on the steps, kissed each of her children on the forehead, and threw Brad a look that mingled pride with an unspoken plea. "Keep the peace." As the car pulled away, Marina closed the door and turned toward the house, uncertain of the role she would play in the days to come. That evening, Brad wandered the empty hallways, drawn inexplicably to the soft glow of the foyer, where Marina had just hung a fresh arrangement of white lilies. He found her there, her back to him, as she straightened a photograph of the family on a side table. The hush that fell between them was so profound, it might have been carved from stone. He cleared his throat softly. She turned. Their eyes met. And for a moment, the mansion dissolved around them. "Mr. Pitt," Marina said, barely above a whisper, though she had called him Brad in her mind many times. "Brad," he corrected instinctively, stepping closer. Her name felt like an invocation on his lips, soft yet urgent. She held her breath as he offered her the water he had fetched from the kitchen. "Thank you," she said, but her voice trembled. He watched the dribble of condensation slide down the glass, and then he gently lifted the tumbler to her lips. She sipped, and as she did, he let his gaze linger on the curve of her neck. The air between them crackled, laden with questions neither dared to voice. At that instant, they both understood that they had crossed a line. It was not yet a betrayal indeed, but the slow burn of desire was already scorching the ground they stood on. Marina stepped back, as if to regain composure, smoothing the front of her apron. "I should," she began, but he closed the distance again, closing off her escape. "Don't go," Brad said, his voice husky. "Just stay." Her heart pounded so fiercely she feared he might hear it. She looked into his eyes and saw there the same storm raging within him that had settled in her soul. She was torn between duty and desire, the sense of right and the pull of something undeniably fierce. She inhaled, the scent of lilies and polished wood enveloping her. And for a fleeting heartbeat, she considered giving in to the magnetic force that drew them together. Then, with the graceful decisiveness of someone who knew she must protect herself, she straightened her shoulders and backed away. "I have work to finish," she said softly. "Good night, Mr. Pitt." He watched her disappear into the corridors, her silhouette swallowed by the dim light. In that moment, as the front door clicked shut behind her, Brad felt as though he had lost something precious, and perhaps found something equally dangerous. The magnetism of the forbidden hovered between them, a silent challenge that neither could ignore. And in the stillness of the night, the mansion itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the consequences of their unspoken pact to unfold. Night draped itself over the mansion like a velvet shroud. The children's rooms lay silent, their soft breaths a lullaby in the background. Every lamp in the West Wing had been extinguished, except for a single desk light in Brad's study, where he sat bent over script pages, the jasmine-scented breeze drifting through an open window. Outside, the broken rhythm of cicadas pulsed against the dark. Inside, a different heartbeat stirred, one fueled by secrecy and desire. Brad leaned back in his leather chair, massaging his temples. He thought of Angelina, thousands of miles away on Manhattan soil, her laughter replaced by phone calls he answered half-heartedly. His throat felt dry, and he poured himself another glass of water. As he raised it to his lips, he heard the faintest click of polished shoes on marble floors. Marina drifted along the corridor beyond the study door, her tray of silver cutlery rattling softly. She paused, sensing his gaze even before she saw him, as if the house itself had warned her. Brad stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "Marina," he whispered. The turmoil in his voice startled them both. She set the tray down on a side table. Her heart pounded so hard she feared it might betray them. "Mr. Pitt," she began, but the two words felt foreign on her tongue. She forced herself to steady her breath, clutching the edge of the tablecloth as though it were a lifeline. He crossed the room in 2 strides, his shadow falling over the silverware. "Brad," he corrected, uninvited, "I can't stop thinking about you." His confession hovered in the air, heavy with guilt and promise. Marina's eyes widened. Shame flooded through her, mingling with an undeniable thrill. She should have drawn back, reminded him of his vow to his wife, of her own place in this gilded world. Instead, she found herself stepping closer. "This is wrong," she murmured, voice quivering. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. The tip of his finger trailed down her cheek, grazing her collarbone. "Everything about us feels right," he said, low and urgent. "When it's just us, I remember what it means to feel alive." Their collision was inevitable. Brad's hand slid to her waist, pulling her into the soft pool of lamplight. Marina's breath hitched as he bent his head, lips finding hers in a desperate, tender kiss. It was nothing like the grand practiced passion of tabloids. It was raw, intimate, and terrified. Her uniform rustled against his shirt, their silhouettes melting into one another. In that stolen embrace, the mansion's hush deepened. Portraits on the walls seemed to watch in solemn silence as they surrendered to the moment. Marina clutched at his shirt, the fabric dampening under her fingers, and Brad's arms tightened around her as though fearful she might vanish. They moved together toward the music room, past the grand piano, whose keys had previously echoed with children's laughter. And there, lit only by moonlight spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows, they let the world slip away. Marina's blouse fell to the floor, forgotten. Brad's breath came in ragged gasps. Their bodies pressed close, pulse synchronized, every touch a confession more potent than any spoken vow. Time warped. Minutes bled into each other. Every kiss scorched away their doubts. Every caress stoked the blaze of their forbidden union. In the quiet aftermath, they lay entangled on the Persian rug, shadows of foliage dancing on the ceiling. Marina rested her head against his chest, listening to the thunder of his heartbeat. Guilt crept in as dawn approached. Marina rose abruptly, gathering her discarded clothes. The gravity of what they'd done anchored her with shame. Brad remained on his back, staring at the polished wood above, as though trying to erase the night from his memory before it could be discovered. She slipped out of the room without a word. Her footsteps echoed through the corridor, each click a reminder of her betrayal. Brad stood, straightened his shirt, and gulped down the remains of his water. He smoothed his hair, his reflection in the piano's glossy surface warped by regret. When morning light filtered through the windows, Brad found one of Marina's white gloves lying on the rug. He picked it up and frowned at the smug, impossible token of what he had lost and found in one night. The glove slipped from his fingers to the floor, landing softly on the unexpected threshold between innocence and infidelity. And though the house stirred awake, servants arriving, children bounding through the halls, the mansion's walls carried a new weight. Trust had been fractured, and in its place burned a silent, devastating fire, the undeniable truth of their betrayal. What came next would change everything. The morning light slanted through the grand windows of the foyer, painting long rectangles of pale gold across the marble floor. It should have been a gentle awakening, but for Angelina Jolie, it was a harbinger of devastation. She returned from New York on a quiet Tuesday, her mind still buzzing with gala logistics and speeches drafted late into the night. Instead of greeting laughter and the warmth of home, she found the house cloaked in an unsettling hush. Angelina's heels clicked sharply as she entered the entry hall. She set her suitcase down with unexpected force. The children's laughter, usually echoing through the corridors at this hour, was absent. The scent of lilies, Brad's favorite, hovered in the air, but it felt too deliberate, almost accusing. She paused before the full-length mirror by the staircase. Her reflection stared back, poised and composed, yet her dark eyes held a flicker of something she could not yet name. On the console table beneath the mirror lay a single sheet of stationery, its edges curled ever so slightly. She picked it up with trembling fingers. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Marina's neat, looping script. 3 simple lines. "I'm sorry, I can't stay here anymore. Please forgive me and forgive him." M. A chill ran down Angelina's spine as she realized the he must be Brad. She turned toward the study, her heart pounding. The door stood ajar, light spilling out in a sliver. Inside, Brad sat at his desk, head bowed, hands covering his face. The scattered pages of scripts and the solitary glove on the floor, Marina's glove, confronted her like evidence in a silent trial. "Brad," she whispered. His head snapped up as though he had been waiting for her call. The desk lamp glowed like a spotlight on his anguished expression. He rose unsteadily, knocking over a cup of pens that clattered to the floor. Angelina crossed the threshold without a word. Each step felt like walking through glass, every shard reflecting memories of better days. "Tell me," she said softly, voice brittle. "Tell me it's not true." Brad closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Angie," he began, but no words could bridge the chasm that had opened between them. She lifted the glove, turning it over in her hand. "Marina," she said flatly, "she left this." He swallowed hard, reaching for her, but she recoiled as though struck. He stammered. "You what, Brad?" "You what?" Her voice trembled on the edge of shattering. The room seemed to constrict around them, as though the walls themselves recoiled from their pain. He forced himself to speak. "I made a terrible mistake." Angeline's breathing ragged, she turned away, eyes fixed on the sprawling estate outside the window. In its manicured gardens and sunlit terraces, she saw only the illusion of perfection she had lived. "Mistake," she repeated, voice hollow. It wasn't a mistake when it happened night after night. It was a choice. His shoulders sagged, guilt weighing down every movement. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "It meant nothing, Angie, compared to you." She laughed, a sound like breaking porcelain. "Nothing?" Her reflection in the window looked back at her, eyes rimmed red, mouth set in a thin line. "Nothing compared to me." She turned, raising her hand to mirror the motion. "Look at me." Their reflections hovered side by side in the glass. Angelina's fierce sorrow, Brad's shameful contrition. The fractured image of their union was impossible to ignore. Angelina reached out, fingertips brushing the cold surface. "See how broken we are?" Silence fell, heavier than any argument. Finally, Angelina pulled away, meeting Brad's gaze with resolute calm. "I need time," she said. "I need space from this house, from you, from the memory of what happened here." She set the glove on the desk and walked toward the door. "I'm leaving, Brad. I don't know if I'm coming back." He watched her go, every fiber of his being screaming after her. But he did not follow. When the door clicked shut, the study felt cavernous, empty of hope. In the days that followed, Angelina packed her essentials and retreated to a guest villa on the coast. Brad remained in the mansion, haunted by the echo of her absence. They communicated only through brief, stilted messages about the children's schedules and household affairs. No apologies, no pleas for forgiveness. Only the raw ache of two people severed by trust, betrayed. Marina, guilt-ridden and inconsolable, had disappeared from sight. Brad never called her. The eviction notice was delivered with official brevity. Her final note remained on his desk, an epitaph for their destructive liaison. The mansion, once a sanctuary of shared dreams, became an empty shell. In the grand hall, mirrors reflected empty chairs and dust motes dancing in the sunlight. Portraits of family milestones looked down upon vacant rooms, bearing silent witness to a love irrevocably fractured. And so, the perfect facade of Hollywood glamour shattered into broken reflections, each shard a testament to desire's devastating power, and the price of betrayal that can never fully be repaid.